Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, Tim. How are you? How's the weather?
The weather, I'm gonna be real honest, I have not gone outside. It looks cool. It looks cold out there. I'm avoiding it.
True. Yeah, it's a little chilly here in Florida today. I walked outside and it's like a little burr,
Oh yeah, it's
probably
like
like high
60,
50s, low 60s.
63.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
No, my watch says it's 25 degrees, so
Yeah, it's
I
pretty chilly.
don't want none
Absolutely.
of that.
Missed out a little bit.
Yeah. So what's going on, man?
Yeah, not a whole lot. There's a lot of been, let's see, a lot of news on AI recently. We've got Grok 3 was just released like yesterday or the day before, and some pretty kind of really cool capabilities like deep search and then think. Whereas I think before OpenAI had that same service, but it was like 200 bucks a month, and so they're
Yeah.
allowing people to use it for free. I think you were saying, right? You used it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I tried the different ones. I don't. I always wanted to use like save it for work stuff so I can like get paid for what I'm doing. So I didn't,
Yeah,
get to
absolutely.
experiment on like the coding and things unrelated to my
Mhm.
work. But for what I was developing, it was super nice. Like comprehensive searches, pulled like 50 resources, scanned them, summarized it into a list for me, and then I used the
Nice.
that was the deep search, and then I used the think to kind of develop rubrics to evaluate programs that are implementing all the things that I just said. And it was like pretty good. It still needed a little bit of tinkering, but I mean, it
Mhm.
definitely just saved me like 3 hours. So I'll take
Yeah,
it.
there you go. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and like one thing you could do is with like the tinkering around, you could say, hey, how could I have better distilled this information in terms of the question? And then that way, I found that like it's kind of helpful because then you sort of like you really have to like you're kind of suggesting weave with the prompts relative to the output. And so once you can kind of figure out whatever your end goal is, kind of how to ask it the best way, sort of like to one shot the prompt. But in
Yeah.
any case, they're very powerful. That's crazy. 3 hours you saved. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. It's like a huge program eval that I'm building, and there's a lot of parts. But to your point, man, I've been teaching some students how to create these AI powered apps where it's like their own chatbot, but designed for a specific purpose and workflow and trained on data that the students can provide. And
Very
that was
cool.
one of the things I showed them was like you should use the AI to help refine your prompts before you start just like trying stuff. Like come up with like what you want it to do,
Hmm.
feed it to the AI, ask it how to improve the prompt, or like make it more
Totally.
advanced or like whatever. And they thought that was pretty cool to like AI within AI.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's I mean, even for like, text to image AI, it's like help generate a prompt for that. And I mean, yeah, and it's really a lot of refining and a lot of planning I've found. The more you can focus on that, and then instead of just getting right into it, depending on like whatever you're doing, definitely like more planning is like is very helpful. And sort of to that note, I just discovered sort of like a rule set that you can have for like the AIs, in that you can tell it like, hey, enter planning mode,
Mhm.
and so once you enter planning mode, you need to ask yourself or ask me 5 to 6 sort of questions to sort of make sure your understanding is grounded, and I'll get back to you. And then from there, come up with like a game plan and explain that. And then within that sort of context, it's actually really, really well at like integrating new features from a code perspective. But I would imagine, you know, doesn't really matter the domain sort of use case,
Mhm.
but just sort of like adds that context. It's pretty cool. Kind of interesting idea. I never really thought about that before.
Yeah. So it's funny. I've kind of discovered something similar. I like the way you stated it to go into planning mode, right? Or like give it a certain context to work within. But I've
Hmm.
been building my apps to interview and interview the
Okay.
user to like purposefully collect information. And then, once the user has like exhausted the input,
Hmm.
then you move to output mode and consider everything that
Okay.
they just
Totally.
said. Hmm.
That's pretty cool. So so they're like interviewing for like maybe like, what they want to do in life, or
No,
or
no.
That'd be
more
kind of
like
amazing for students, I guess.
so one of my colleagues is actually building that. So they have a whole
Oh,
organization
nice.
around they call it Life Launch, and it do exactly what it sounds like. And
That's very
yeah,
cool.
but in my context, like okay, one example is I am I created a tool that helps teachers turn their ideas into like really formal and rigorous lesson plans. And so the bot is like,
Okay,
okay, like what's your idea? How old are the kids? How long do you have? You know, is it
totally.
one sitting or is it like a week long lesson or a month long project? And what are the
Mm-hmm.
standards that you need to hit? Do you have a project or an assessment, or do you want me to create that? And it's like kind of asking them questions based on this like research-based template that I prefer. And then
Right.
once it has all that information, then it fills out a whole lesson plan based on the whole interaction.
That's
And then
awesome, dude.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's so sick. Yeah, it's basically the same thing, but it's like abstracted differently, and then, it gets those reports. It's got a lot of kind of take that same concept. You can apply it in a lot of different ways. That's really interesting. I'll have to got some ideas cooking already. That's cool, man. I
Yeah.
love that.
So you had mentioned something called vibe coding, and I don't know what that is. Can you tell me kind of
Yeah,
what you
yeah.
have
So,
cooking?
yeah, Andre Kaparthi, he was at one point. I think he used to work at OpenAI, and then he also was the lead AI guy for Tesla. And he sort of coined the phrase, as far as I know. And so basically, the idea is so you're using some type of AI. Really, from his context, he's using this app called Cursor, Cursor.com, and then basically you can integrate within like so Claude or OpenAI sort of LLMs, and then is able to edit the code in real time. And then he has some other sort of notions to where you have this thing called YOLO mode. And so YOLO mode paired with this agent mode allows the agent to sort of like problem solve or like go at your prompt. And then without having to say, hey, accept this code or run this specific command. And then from there, you just give it a prompt and it's just like going, talking to itself, seeing the problems, fixing those in real time. And so, and then basically you're just like copying, pasting the errors, putting them into the prompt, and you're not really coding anymore. You're just sort of like vibing. You're listening to some music, I suppose, and then it just kind of like solving the problems, and pressing, it's like solve, solve, fix, fix, fix until, I suppose you don't have any problems.
Yeah. So you're like using natural language to direct a coding AI and then
Hmm.
responding to errors that arise and then plugging that into another AI and then fixing it. Is that
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
basic?
pretty much. Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Oh, sounds like I could do that.
Yeah, totally. So it really is just the boundlessness of your own creativity. Like there probably is some coding stuff, but again, like you just say, hey, take the error. And even like kind of what we were talking about in terms of context, you could just say, hey, enter teacher mode relative to debugging this and explain this to me. And then it'll be very thorough in how to, relative to how you want to be taught, I suppose, in the rule settings. And then you could say, hey, this is how, it breaks down. This is explaining it. So then you use it as like a learning opportunity. And I think a lot of people learn best by doing rather than reading. I mean, at least that's for me. And so this is a great way to sort of like further that kind of idea.
Yeah, that's super cool. And what specific AIs do you use for this? You mentioned I think Claude and Cursor.
Mhm.
Like are those the two that you use or is there other tools?
Yeah, so Cursor is just like a fork of Visual Studio Code. And then, but they do have a model. I think it's like called Cursor Small, but I mainly use OpenAI and Anthropic's model. So yeah, Claude and then O3 Mini High or just like ChatGPT 4. But you can use a variety of other different models to facilitate.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna have to like once I get the project that I want, I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
I'll consult you, buddy, and we'll make it happen.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, man. And like I use it pretty much every day. And but like since Grok 3 was just released, people are making it to make video games. And these video games are just like super funny. They got Elon. with like laser beams destroying like, the IRS or, whatever the, the kind of.
Collecting free speech points.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
exactly.
saw
So,
that.
and
Yeah.
I guess it's really good at making video games, at least Grok 3 is. But it
Yeah.
has been definitely a game changer because like just from a coding perspective, because like I think people with using AI are going to replace the people that don't use AI. And so like I think getting familiar with it now, and that's really cool that you're teaching
Yeah.
the students how to use it. Because I mean, I think really what you want to do is like from like an engineering perspective is take what's off the shelf, package that up for a given use case, and then now you have a service, and then you can make money off of that service and things like that, and then just rinse and
Yeah.
repeat.
Dude, so all right. I didn't plan on talking about this, but I've been like cooking an idea, and I'm about to the point where I can like build a pitch deck, and approach the people for funding. And so I thought you might really appreciate it because um, it's really inspired by the ethos of Ergo and decentralization and empowerment and open source. So what my idea is to create an open source platform for AI supported micro schools, right? So
Okay.
I want to be able to build out like all the agents that would be required to operate a really small school in the same way that a really big school might operate. So, you would have an HR bot, a recruiting bot, people managing this and that, everything that
Hmm.
is wasteful in a big school. Like you have this huge bureaucracy in a school. So
Totally.
here's some math to kind of define the problem. Students on average, they receive, well, not students, schools receive about $13,000 per student to operate, and
Oh
then
wow.
teachers only capture like 20% of that. So teachers get paid 20% of what students bring in, and the rest is overhead for like running a school. And
Oh wow.
so right. And so the problem I see is like that's why we don't have great teachers or enough teachers. That's why we don't have enough teachers because we're not paying them enough. There's not a market,
Right.
right? It's not a free market.
Incentives not there. Right.
Yep. And so I want to be able to put out an just open platform so anybody could take this information and spin up their own micro school based on their strengths and the tools that are available. There's all sorts of like online stuff that, you could just do a homeschool real easy and like have access
Hmm.
to like state accredited online schooling. Like that's fine. And then you need like a person who's there to like watch the kids, or if you're more
Hmm.
experienced, develop like really cool projects to do with the kids, like
Hmm.
have some chickens in a garden, and or maybe you're a welder and you want to like teach your kids how to weld, or maybe you have like a welding business, and you're like, oh, let's do some like real world experience and give these kids an opportunity to like make money and interact, and that could like actually pay for the students tuition, so that like maybe
Totally.
they have to pay to participate. And I got a whole thing. uh
Yeah,
I, I
that's
thought it was
awesome, man.
I thought it was a cool idea.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially too, do you plan to like open source it, would you say? Or, especially from like the code perspective, I'd be curious. So then, other people can then, run their own hardware because you could have like, hey, this is what we use, and then
Yeah.
here's our code base, here's how to set it up, or what's your sort of like plan for that?
Yeah. Well, I really liked the back end front end dichotomy, right? So everything that
Hmm.
would be like minimum requirements to do this. So somebody just like with only an internet connection could run an
Hmm.
effective school in some other country. Um, I think all of that
Totally.
should be free. All of that should just be totally free because it's just like it wouldn't cost me anything for someone to copy what I made, you know?
Right.
But then you can have like a front end, like a marketplace built on top of it, where it's like, oh, I have expertise in behavior. I'm like trained as a behaviorist, and so let's say, oh, you're encountering this thing, give me $10 and I'll give you my protocol
Right,
for
right.
teaching new behaviors or managing behaviors or like whatever my expertise is, I could
Yeah, yeah,
market
yeah.
that through the
That's
network.
cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, you could have like, oh, check out my HR bot, with my proven success. You could like run your own like
Yeah.
science sort of behind it and be like, hey, this is our sort of, I guess, success metrics, or, like you said, get my welding bot or my, XYZ bot or whatever. That's a cool idea, especially from homeschooling.
Uh,
We want to like, we're looking at potentially homeschooling our little one and like, all right, how do we do it? But like, yeah, having like AI agents be able to talk to and be like, hey, this is sort of like what we're looking for in like the education, and then making sure we're meeting like state requirements and all that kind of stuff. That's super cool, man.
yeah. And like, just to show you like the scale of the incentives. So let, excuse me, let's say there's me and two other people, and we were able to, let's say we get 25 kids each, and you have 3 days that they're with us and 3 days that they're at home. That's pretty cool.
Hmm.
Well, that's 75 kids times, let's say 10,000 a kid that you could bring in. That's a lot of money.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
yeah,
so
yeah.
as just as a teacher with a class size that is so much smaller than in reality, it's like,
Hmm.
okay, the kids are here on Mondays and there's half of them. So we'll call it 40 kids divided by three people. That's small. Like
Hmm.
that's amazing. And then, there's $700,000 floating around to pay for everything and pay your teachers what they're worth. Um,
Totally. And you could double
I,
that up. So then instead of doing 3 days, do 6 days. I mean, it might be pretty tough, I guess,
I,
on the
I,
teacher, or do like
I was
somehow,
gonna I was gonna say alternate it. So you would have one
right.
cohort come like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the other cohort come Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm sorry, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then
Okay, right.
you could just have like 8 week runs. So it's like 8 weeks on, 2 weeks off, something like that. Um,
Okay,
so
totally.
you do like sprints and you have shorter projects where you're like, okay, done, and then you shift gears, and the kids would be doing their asynchronous work that is related to
Hmm.
whatever you're doing in person.
Right. Yeah. And the next thing you know, like, so then that's a double. It's like 1.4 million. And then, definitely could pay the teacher some decent
Yeah.
money, and obviously incentivize them to, do their
There,
best.
there's a lot of hurdles around like making it fair for people because like not everyone can participate in that, especially if you're like having kids with disabilities or things like that. So
Sure.
that's where I'm trying to think about the broader aspects of the funding model. Like how do you make this
Hmm.
private and free for everyone so that there's an incentive for people to include students with disabilities or whoever, um,
Right.
that was because right now it's like schools are just like, well, how much do we get? And then they try to like solve the problem with that.
Hmm.
But really it's like this is so valuable, they should be able to like capture that value and work with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, keep the, like you're saying, like the back end, right? Keep that free, allow people to stand it up, whatever, and then have whatever specific front end, so like you could have teachers that specialize, in the specific sort of demographic of kids, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Say it's kids with special needs or not. And then kind of, but that would be just so cool having that open source like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So I've got a lot of relationships in the space, and I'm about to like send it. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, hey, let me know if you need any help AI wise.
Dude, if I can get a grant, I'll definitely let you know, and I'll pay you to help me. Uh,
Yeah, hey, that sounds great.
so that's how I'm going to use AI. How do you think AI is going to be like related to crypto and blockchain and Ergo? Like what use cases do you see there?
Yeah, I see definitely a lot of use cases. Like I was just actually looking today how the deep search like methodology works, and how so it's like from a diagram perspective, it's like, hey, user gives you a query, and I know I just like kind of read it, but and then some things kind of happen in this sort of block to where it's like it's referring to different contexts, and then it goes back to the query. And then sort of this sort of loop process. I'm doing a terrible job of explaining it, but the idea is it's like, well, what if instead of like the use case of being searching, like what if it's looking at like API data for like Ergo, or what if it's like making trades for me, and so it's like, hey, based on my query, I want you to try to make, I don't know, 5% return every single day. And then it's says, okay, great. And then it's like, hey, here are the trades maybe you should make based off today's prices, loop back, and sort of has this very iterative process within the sort of mechanism. So that would be very interesting. And so I'm not sure if we have a code base or things like that. I know we have, like, for example, the GRPO reinforcement learning training method, which is used by DeepSeek. And so we actually have, I just trained an LLM last week or a few days ago on this method, and we're trying to fine tune it on Ergo script so that we can generate Ergo script contracts a lot more reliably than we have before or currently can. And so that's, so we have various different applications. We can have very agentic, so similar to the teaching idea, but we could say, hey, given my natural language prompts, generate me like a grid trading bot maybe, or hey, generate me some smart contracts, or hey, given this like transaction history list, summarize my data. Are there any, alerts that I need to be alerted? Is this like a weird transaction that somebody sent? Did somebody hack my wallet? And that's what this sort of is, or, so there's a lot of, again, I think it goes back to whatever your input is. And as humans, we have a lot of creativity. And so depending on how creative you are, that's, I think, you can let that run with it.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. I can imagine like myself wanting to develop a portfolio where it's like, okay, with like 10% of my stack, I want you to try to like earn that 5-10% every day or whatever, like
Right.
try
Yeah.
to trade with this stack, don't lose it, adjust your strategy if you start losing money
Hmm.
and this
Right.
and that. And then, if you reach X amount of ERG in this account, send it to the long-term stack and stop trading with that. And then, another
Hmm.
portion might be with this section of my bag, I want you to be in SigUSD and manage a position in duck pools
Totally.
or look for opportunities in Signify because some of those pop up and it's like I can make how many percent in 6 months? Like
Right. Yeah.
40%. All right. That's
That's pretty good.
great.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I love it, man. That would be sick. Like your
And
own
it, and
little.
it, and it goes back to like kind of what you were saying, where it's like, and again, if we could even, and that's what would be interesting to work on your project, because like we could abstract that maybe enough to where instead of like, again, the context, you can use it wherever. So instead of like an HR sort of agent, you could have like a SIG USD agent that just looks at that price and maybe makes trades. Then there's like all these different token agents, and then those have go up to roll back to like maybe like an agent trading manager, and then there's the director, and then director is saying, and then you have the staking manager for like duck pools, then you have, and then they're all making and talking to each other for the best return. And this, and oh, SIG USD really says we should buy. Feed that all the way up to the director. Again, it's very similar with you know, um, the
Yeah.
rubrics. You could generate, be like, oh, hey, this student really needs this sort of maybe learning, and that flows all the way back up. All right, now we'll adjust it, goes back. Um, so I think really like if we can get to that like point in time where you can just spawn all these different agents and have them do this specific outputs and then connect them or bridge them together. Like for example, like if you wanted an agent to buy and sell like the DEX, like you're going to have to write some smart contracts to facilitate that. So that would need to happen as well. But it would be really neat to be able to orchestrate all these different types of agents at one point, especially on chain.
Yeah. Yeah. Orchestrate. I like that. You're kind of just doing this, like,
Yeah.
yeah, and everything else is falling into place. Yeah, that's the dream, right? See,
Hmm.
I'm at the point where I am my limitation in using AI is that I am stuck in the sandbox of my chat, right? So
Oh
I'm
yeah.
wanting to like take that leap where the AI is actually writing into my documents or my spreadsheets or
Hmm.
actually building my website or whatever. Context of Ergo would be actually
Mhm.
giving it control of a wallet and like having to do stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really not that far away. Like this code base that I have, it's called Token Flight. I built that all like through vibe coding, not with Cursor per se, but it's still nonetheless the same concept. And then and then from an agent perspective, it's really easy for it to, hey, run this code, airdrop this, send this person that. And so that's just a simple like sort of wallet TX capabilities that it has. And then we just need to build out more different features. Um, but it can certainly help you get there.
Yeah, that's cool, man. You know what I really appreciate about this whole conversation is that we are just like looking to create value and not just like
Mm-hmm.
extract it from people. You're like that.
Totally.
This is what we're doing. And I had a thought maybe a couple weeks ago, and I've been like looking to kind of like develop it. It's like Ergo is like not PvP, you know. It's just not that same way that meme coins are. It's like every person who got rich using a meme coin, like that money came from other people, you know. It's like
Right.
value was not created, it was moved around.
Right.
That is a zero sum game. And
Total in
so
exchange.
yeah, yeah. And like people were duped. Like that is like how that happened. You know, it's like, oh, I thought this meme coin was gonna go up and it went down 99%. Like, oh shit.
Right. Yeah.
But I feel like what Ergo is doing is instead of like PvP, it's more like player versus environment, where we are like building these structures that create value and security and um, enable people to like be free and kind of ensure what we are saying is like human rights or you know could be human rights.
Hmm.
That's kind of like what we're hoping to create. And so I was looking, I think yesterday or day before, somebody there's a Cardano account was just like kind of waxing on about how he's losing faith. You know, it's like, oh, but
Hmm.
the only thing he ever even talked about was price. He's like, oh, you know, I
Hmm.
invested this much and I'm down, and you know, it's not going up. Like I don't know if it's going to go up. Like why would it go up if it hasn't gone up? And I mean, dude is talking about having 16,000 erg, which is like a lot. So that's more than I have.
Totally.
And his whole evaluation of like how things are going is based on the price. But
Hmm.
that would imply that he's like waiting for other people to buy in so he could dump on them. And like that's like the wrong attitude that I feel, you
True.
know? It's like he should be as much as he is collecting erg, he should also be providing things that create value. Like duck
Hmm.
pools is a good example. You know, it's like it sure it is this business and people are getting paid and people are making money, but it's providing a good on both ends of that trade. It's like people
Hmm.
are either shorting or longing because that's what they want, and then other people are reducing risk because that's what they want, and everyone has their
Hmm.
opportunity to make money. And it's not a fixed pie. And you're like, you know, and the more people that participate in that, actually the more value erg goes up and everybody's winning, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well said. Yeah, for sure. And even the equivalent exchange bringing in Full Metal Alchemist at the end of that series, they talk about how the notion of like creating more than you consume, so maybe there is this sort of idea of like if you can create more, there's a different sort of like I guess paradigm with that. And I think that kind of holds true here, right? If you can kind of create more like trees, right, they grow and grow, but then they become like this ecosystem for like animals like within the forest and things like that. And that's kind of what we need to do here within Ergo. You're right. We need to grow and then host our own little ecosystems within our own growth. So then we're also thriving, but then so are other people. There's a little, we can cast some,
Yeah.
shade in a good way onto some plants in the forest or bear fruit or again, whatever you want to say, I guess relative to a tree analogy. But yeah, and even kind of looking at the post not really comparing like where we have been in 2021. Like we didn't have Rosen Bridge. It was just sort of like an ocean. You know
Oh,
what
that
I
was
mean?
SIG
Like,
USD.
right. In a DEX, and that's it. You know what I mean? Duck Pools wasn't online yet. There were, very limited mature apps, and I would say with respect to price and where we have been to now, it is impressive to see that the development community has not stopped despite, going from $20 to we're close to $1 now. And so it's like, well, people are still making some like great dApps and utility on the chain in and of itself. And so definitely like you're saying, I think it's it's the wrong metric to analyze. But then also I think as a society, we need to look at, maybe more of creating more than consuming more. That sort of
Yeah.
PvP versus environment idea you're saying.
hmm Like I, it's reminded me of a quote. I think the book was called Notes to Myself. It's like an old hippie philosophy book, and he says, don't try to obtain the value that you think that you're worth, but try to
Hmm.
express that value. Like that is like the truest. That is a more true understanding of like what your value is. It's like what do you want, like dollars to quantify you
Hmm.
as a person? Like no, like you need to like engage with people and the world and like make it more beautiful and enjoy
Hmm.
yourself, not just like
Totally.
Scrooge McDuck, like swimming around in your
Right.
coins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And that's kind of like the idea, I think, with some people with Ergo, maybe where it's like they expect it to go to $20. And so they're just like, why hasn't it done anything yet? And like, um, so they have a lot of expectations, in terms of, and that kind of holds them back to really enjoy like the fruits again of like where we've been, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And like where we currently are. And, now we're getting ready to maybe integrate in the next 6 to 9 months, sub blocks and, all the optimizations on top of sub blocks. And we might be potentially, one of the fastest blockchains. Like that's huge. You know what I mean? That's not really in the discussion. Like I feel like we've definitely created more than we have consumed just in terms of, but like this sort of consuming idea is definitely rearing its head, especially relative to price. Cause again, people want to consume the fiat in replace of their ergs because they want the number to go up. And like, I get
Mhm.
it, right? People got bills to pay and things like that. But um, I think it's a lot of also just like the old crypto sort of idea. It's like, hey, it's supposed to go up right now, hasn't gone up, and it's like, so they're kind of getting weak in their convictions.
Yeah, and to your point about just like thinking about your crypto in terms of fiat, I love the meme where it's like Morpheus and Neo, and he's like, oh, are you telling me my Bitcoin's going to be worth? I could sell my Bitcoin for $1 million. He's like, no, I'm telling you, when you're ready, you won't have to. Yeah,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
like that's how we should think. It's like this is trying. We're not trying. We are making something that is better than what currently exists. So like, stop trying to
Hmm.
give it away. And
Yeah, totally. And even to,
yeah,
to that point, like, they think it's going to 20x or, or whatever, right? But like when in reality, they could have like put it in SIG USD and they could have been getting that return. But instead, it's like, no, well, instead of going for the return that was there, that was like available, you left it in ERG because you thought it was going to 20x. And now you're upset that you're down maybe. And it's just like, I don't know. I think it's just all like of his expectations and, I don't know. It's not necessarily something you can control. And so that goes back into, well, then why don't you try to control something? And then you can be upset with yourself or not. And it goes into Ergo taking as much control as you can. And so if you're not actively doing that, and then plus two, I think this person was a developer and doesn't develop on Ergo, they develop on Cardano. So it's like another sort of like, all right, you know, make some stuff on Ergo, bring more people here. I don't know.
yeah, dude. So the whole conversation and your tree and ecosystem analogy is reminding me of something. If you or anybody looking for like a really neat documentary to watch, it's called The Biggest Little Farm, and
Okay.
it's about this couple that moves out of LA and they buy this farmland and it's like wrecked. It's been like monocropped forever, and they're gonna so they that's how they could afford it because it wasn't profitable.
Hmm.
And then they're trying to implement all these like regenerative farming practices. And so it's just like
Hmm.
all about like working from first principles and increasing the diversity of the life that is there, starting with the soil. It's like our core protocol, all they're doing is trying to
Totally.
get worms to live in the dirt, and then they're just like adding these fruits and trees and animals and grasses, and it takes like 10 years for them to like get it going. And then once it's going though, it's actually super resilient because there's so much diversity and there was no artificial anything there that could be dropped out, similar to
Right.
VC chains. It's like, well, yeah, of course it grew to $10 billion like really quickly because they just spent $1 billion advertising it, and now
Right.
they're going to suck all that out of you. And like that's not what we're doing here. That's not what we're
Right.
doing here at all.
Yeah, it's like adding too much fertilizer, and it's like, all right, when then you take the fertilizer out, oh, they don't grow as big. It's like, well, yeah, you just pumped it up with all this money, all the fertilizer, and yeah, I mean, the thing is, just like, in like as Ergo, as like the dirt and soil, we need to make it as the core developers need to make it as fertile as possible. But then you get, new trees or plants growing in there, like say like Mu Finance, and then other actors can come into play, like animals will eat, buy some of this, or
Mhm.
Mu Finance, you can like obviously sell stuff, sell NFTs, make NFTs, and so more actors can
Physical
come into
goods.
play. Yeah, physical goods. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I mean, and then you get people that are like the scavengers of like the group, and it's like, oh, well, a resource is there. I'm going to take it because it's available. No one's garden this tomato, and that's fine, I guess. But like, if everybody does that, we're not really going to have like too
Yeah.
fruitful of like a garden or
Mhm.
whatever we got. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
ecosystem's going to be dried up because
Yeah.
there's
And
too
and
much
really
consuming.
and really I think you need some of that. Like I came to
Sure.
terms with that a while ago about trading. It's like, does a day trader really provide value? Like in a way, yeah. Sure, they are just trying to like get more and trade, but they're also like
Mhm.
they're contributing to the signal that something is overpriced or underpriced, right? And they're
Right.
taking the slack out of the system. And that is important because price is information and it needs to be accurate. And that is how we
Totally.
kind of refine that. And we need those people for sure. So I'm
For
not like
sure.
throwing shade on anybody who's trying to make money. It's like, yeah, I hope Ergo goes to $500 and I can retire. Like
Right.
100%, 100%. Please let that happen. But I also hope that that's because we're creating that much value and I have contributed to the
Right.
world, and like done something that's actually worth me retiring and not just because somebody didn't know and then I dumped on them.
Right. Yeah, because like again, like it's like, okay, cool. What if it does go to 100? You know how many people probably have that, or 500, a lot. So especially for people who've been in it a while, that's a solid price to sell. It's like, well, not everyone's going to be able to sell at that. And, if I think if you, and that's kind of like the idea of like culling the garden. It's like, okay, well, you do have to take profits probably, or like take the tomatoes off the branch every couple weeks so it can continue to make tomatoes. You don't just take them
Mhm.
all off, and then now you have weeks of like, you know, atrophy, so to speak, on the plant. And so the same goes there. And so as it starts to fruit, we need to, consider that. But of course, people are going to do what they want to do, so to speak. And
Right.
once they see an empty garden super ripe, right, I would imagine, people are going to take as much as they want. But I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, but hey, that's the life, and that's why the ethos of Ergo is so important. Player versus
Mhm.
environment. We're building a system that is resilient against people who want to attack it and do things that are unfair and obfuscated. And that's what makes us special.
Totally. But we do have some bad actors. I don't know if they're bad actors in the community, but but it's player versus player, and kind of to bring it to a real world on Ergo, on the storage rent. At one point, we were going to get a bunch of Neta, and that was going to be like, I don't remember the specifics. It was like upwards of 20 to 30 we'd be able to translate this for, and that goes straight to the miners. but somebody sniped it from
Ah,
us. And it's just like, it's like, yeah, and that's not really a good look. Makes it look like the devs or, obviously this person has the skills to kind of take that storage rent, the demurrage, but and it does take it away from the miners. So it's just like, and we really don't need to piss off the miners. They're kind of struggling in and of itself because of the price and then, the emission curve and stuff. So there's a little player versus player kind of thing in and of itself right there. But they don't always do it. And so it's like, okay, thanks for leaving some
yeah.
for the rest of us, but
Well, and
happens.
competition is generally, in the long run, it's good. Like
Yeah,
you're gonna be
totally.
better because you're gonna have to compete with that person, you know? And
Yeah,
it's like
totally, dude.
back to the farm analogy, like do you just want to like go and pesticide everything and like kill everything
Right.
that's not perfect for you? Like no, like you wanna grow and rise to that challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point because then we're like, all right, um, I myself or QX, we're like, all right, we need to create a sniping bot script. So then if if we see a juicy one, we'll just have that in the background. So then it'll be two versus one in terms of like capabilities for us to get the block that has a high amount of erg.
Mhm.
And like, yeah, totally. And sometimes, and that's what's cool about in some sense, but if it's just too much consuming, right? Then that's where it's like, all right, that's just too much. But if everyone slowly takes their own, that's fine. Because then it's like, oh, well, that's how you're doing it. Well, let me adjust. Oh, this is how you're doing it. Let me adjust. Just like in the example we gave. And then that's, again, more growth, especially because like, most likely, you can kind of work together or, not that you're working together, but allow each other to exist. You know what I mean? Like there can be multiple dexes. Like that's not really a problem. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
There can be multiple, you know, mining pools. That's certainly okay. There could be multiple, maybe mu finances one day, et cetera. There's at a certain point, everybody can kind of coexist or you got to rise up to the challenge, right? Free market.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if uh the demand is thin or whatever, it's like, well, everyone's trying to get the ergs, and that is
Yeah.
that's a different kind of demand, and that's going to drive up the price of erg. So like,
Yeah.
come on, build on Ergo, compete with us, learn from us, let us learn from you. Like that's how we get that upward spiral. And
Yeah, exactly. Because like, right, like I think, the ideas I have are probably very unique to my like, personal experience. And same thing for you. And so now we have, new ideas coming through with other people and kind of getting their like perspective. They sometimes you can look at a line and looking at it from like the X direction, it looks like a specific shape. If you look at the Y direction, it's another shape. The Z direction, so it's 3D, it's another shape. And so, ergo can often be probably most likely this like n-dimensional sort of like object. And so depending on which way you're sort of looking at it relative to your context,
Mhm.
we can see completely different things. And so that's what's really nice about like also
Yeah,
having this sort of player versus environment because it's like, well, my perspective and like what I can make is going to be different from what you can make, but they probably all have value, especially if you push
yeah,
that.
totally, man. I really love that. I was just listening to a podcast. They were talking about not meme coins per se, but memes as defined by like the scientist Richard Dawkins. He calls
Okay.
memes like a unit of culture, right?
Okay.
And in that sense, Bitcoin is so successful because it is like the original digital unit of culture, where it's like,
Hmm.
no, we're tired of this money printing and unfair, unclear monetary policy. Like, we're going to unite, and like, here's this sentiment, Bitcoin,
Right.
and I think Ergo is developing into its own like meme, its own culture. Ergo has its culture, and it's becoming that unit where we are saying like, hey, maybe don't just try to build something so that you can get rich at the expense of other people. Like, build,
Hmm.
express the value that you have, and use that to create something that is valuable and beneficial to other people. and get rich doing that instead of
Hmm.
just like trying to rug pull people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Build platforms so other people can stand on,
Yeah.
that's like Ergo in and of itself. And I think things will start to come around once people start to get too burned on like the meme coins and then start to value again like the core principles like Bitcoin and Ergo sort of kind of stand for. Um,
Yeah, for sure, man. And it's a long game. It's a long game. It's like just like anything. It's like persistence is more important than your skill, than your intelligence, than anything else. Like it's just a long game, and the protocol is resilient. I think one thing that we'll learn is like the longer that a blockchain has been around, probably the more valuable
mhm,
it's going to be. And
right.
come and try to kill Ergo, like it's not going to happen.
For sure. And like the people about price, it's like, well, maybe, yeah, maybe you were wrong and you put too much money in and now you're upset about it. It's like, well, whose fault is that? You know what I mean? It's like,
For
you got to
sure.
check your emotions. It's like maybe
Yeah.
you did do that. And like that might be a hard look in the mirror for some people. And
Yeah.
if Ergo ever did go to zero or like, not what I'm personally thinking, like that would probably be pretty, that would suck a lot, but I had fun doing it, don't really
Mhm.
regret that.
Mhm.
So
Definitely, brother. Hey, well, I'm about out of time for this morning. Is there anything else you wanted to chat about before we head out?
no, yeah, I'm all set here, man. This was
All
fun.
right. Definitely. Everybody spread the good word. Ergo, player versus environment, do some good in the world. And
Awesome.
have
See
have a
everyone.
good day.
See you.